The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of St. Mary's High School, casting a golden glow on the polished wooden desks and the neatly lined up books. 16-year-old Joseph sat at his usual spot in the second row, pretending to be absorbed in his textbooks. Algebra equations blurred before his eyes, but it wasn't the numbers that held his attention. Today, something, or rather someone, was about to change everything. The classroom door opened, and in walked Madam Himika, 25, elegant and poised, with a sari that shimmered under the sunlight, her hair perfectly tied, her gaze both commanding and proud. The chatter in the room died down instantly. Teachers whispered, students gawked, and all eyes followed her, as if she were a queen entering her domain. But Joseph's eyes lingered longer than any other. The subtle curve of her smile, the sway of her steps, the aura of confidence all ignited an unfamiliar thrill in his young heart. Days passed, and Joseph found it impossible to concentrate. The other students scribbled notes, asked questions, and murmured answers to themselves. But Joseph's gaze remained fixed on Madam Himika. Every glance, every word she spoke, seemed to pull him deeper into a dangerous fascination. He began staying back after class, pretending to organize his notebooks, just to catch a glimpse of her leaving the classroom. At first, Madam ignored him, but one afternoon the teasing gaze lingered too long. Her sharp voice cut through the silence. "Joseph, are you here to study, or just to stare?" Her words startled him, but he smirked confidently, replying, "Shall I answer you alone, madam?" His tone, a mix of audacity and challenge, made the entire classroom tense with anticipation. That day, the school bell rang, and as students rushed out, the classroom emptied, leaving only Madam Himika and Joseph face to face. Her heart raced, a mix of anger and disbelief coursing through her. "Tell me now, what is it you want?" she demanded, her voice firm but slightly trembling. Joseph leaned against a desk, eyes glinting, and spoke words that no teacher would ever expect from a student. Words that felt more like a private confession than school conversation. Madam froze, her mind reeling from the audacity and inappropriateness of his behavior. This was no ordinary flirtation. There was a dangerous undercurrent here, something that threatened her career, her reputation, and the order of the classroom she had worked so hard to maintain. That evening, the school corridors were empty, the setting sun casting long shadows across the floors. Madam Himika walked to her office, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled in her chest. But Joseph's gaze lingered in her mind, his smirk replaying in her thoughts like a haunting echo. And then came the first note-folded piece of paper slipped under her office door, its edges crisp and deliberate. She picked it up, and her hands trembled as she read the chilling message. "Madam, you are mine. You cannot escape me." The words hit her like a punch, a mix of fear and disbelief flooding her senses. She stuffed the note into a drawer, heart pounding, knowing that this was no longer a simple student crush. Joseph had crossed a line. That night, as rain tapped relentlessly against her window, Madame Himeka sat alone, staring at the city lights blurred by water. Her mind replayed every interaction, every glance, every word spoken. The fear gnawed at her, but beneath it, a spark of determination began to glow. She could not let this continue. She would have to be clever, cautious, and precise. Her reputation, her career, and her peace of mind depended on it. And in the darkness of that stormy night, Madame Himeka made a silent vow. She would not be victimized. Joseph may have thought he had control, but he had underestimated the strength of a woman who refused to bow. The next morning, Madame Himeka returned to school, trying to wear her usual composed expression. But every step she took felt heavy, each classroom echoing with the memory of Joseph's audacious gaze. Students noticed her unusual quietness, whispering among themselves, but none suspected the storm brewing inside her. Joseph, meanwhile, carried his secret with a dangerous pride. He watched her from the first bench, eyes glinting with the knowledge that he held a power no one else did. The video he had captured, a small private moment from earlier interactions, had become his tool of manipulation. Every glance, every word, every step he took near her was calculated to remind her that he had the upper hand. As days passed, the tension escalated. Notes began to appear, small threats folded and placed in her books, in her office, even slipped into her handbag when she wasn't looking. "Madame, don't try to hide. I know everything. You can't escape me." The words were short, but packed with menace. Madame Himeka spent nights staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, mind racing through possibilities. How could she protect herself? How could she stop this boy from ruining everything she had worked for? Sleep became a stranger, meals lost their taste, and every shadow in her office seemed to carry Joseph's smirk. Her home was no refuge either. Her young daughter Aishi noticed the unease in her mother's eyes. "Mama, why do you look so worried?" she asked one evening, her innocent voice trembling slightly. Himeka forced a smile, bending down to brush her daughter's hair from her face. "It's nothing, darling. Go sleep. Everything is fine," she whispered, though her chest tightened with guilt. She could not let Aishi see her fear, yet the knowledge that her child's safety and her own dignity were now intertwined only added to the weight she carried. The once bright and orderly home had become a space of tension and silent calculation. At school, Joseph's behavior became bolder. He would sit closer, let his eyes linger, drop cryptic remarks that made Madame Himeka flinch. "Madam," he said one afternoon, voice low but full of confidence, "don't worry, I'll keep this between us. Unless you make me unhappy." Her stomach twisted at his words, but she maintained her composure in front of the other students. Every interaction was a dangerous dance, each movement measured, each word a shield. She realized that confronting him directly could backfire. This was no longer a simple classroom challenge, it was a game of wits, and one mistake could cost her everything. The nights were the worst. Madam Himika would sit by her window, the city drenched in rain, reflecting her mood. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic made her jump. Notes would continue to appear, often in the most unexpected places. The kitchen counter, beneath her pillow, even inside the textbooks she was supposed to grade. "Madam, you are mine. Don't even think of escaping." Each message was a reminder of Joseph's audacity and the precarious position she was in. She began to meticulously plan, analyzing his behavior, noting his routines, and thinking through possible traps. She had to turn the tables, but she also knew that patience and precision were her greatest allies. Then, one evening, as rain poured heavily and the house was quiet, Himika found herself alone with another note. This one more ominous than the rest. "You can't hide from me, madame. I'll see you when you least expect it." Her hands shook as she held the paper, a chill running down her spine. But instead of succumbing to fear, a fire ignited within her. She realized that to survive, she needed more than caution. She needed strategy. She started documenting everything: dates, times, messages, and behavior, building a record that could expose Joseph if necessary. Every move he made would be catalogued, every interaction scrutinized. This meticulous preparation became her armor against his manipulation. Madame Himika's mind also drifted to her students, wondering how much they had noticed. She knew appearances mattered. She had to maintain authority, command respect, and show no weakness. Each morning, she walked into the classroom with her posture straight, her voice steady, delivering lessons as if nothing had changed. But in the privacy of her office, she plotted. She reviewed security footage, considered alerting authorities, and weighed the timing of her next move. Her world had become a delicate balance of outward composure and inward calculation, a psychological battlefield, where she had to anticipate every step Joseph might take. And then came the breakthrough. A small slip from Joseph revealed more than he intended: a hint of overconfidence, a detail that allowed Himika to devise a plan. She realized she could control the narrative, not just react. She contacted trusted colleagues discreetly, prepared evidence, and set a controlled trap. All while maintaining her everyday role as a disciplined, caring teacher. The tension in the school corridors intensified. Each glance between her and Joseph now charged with silent electricity. The suspense building toward a confrontation that would decide who truly held power. The day had come. Madame Himika's heart beat steadily under her calm exterior, each step echoing down the empty corridors as she walked to her classroom. She knew Joseph would be watching, testing her reaction, gauging her confidence, waiting for any slip. But today, she was ready. She had documented every note, every cryptic message, every subtle threat. She had discreetly alerted the school principal and authorities, arranged for witnesses, and set the stage for Joseph's exposure. Today, the tables would turn. The students filed into the classroom, unaware of the storm about to erupt. Joseph, sitting at his usual front row seat, cast a confident smirk her way, assuming that fear still held her in its grip. Madam Himeka's voice rang clear, steady, commanding attention. "Good morning, class. Today we will have a short test 3 questions. Write what you know, attempt what you don't, and be honest with your answers." Her tone was calm, but beneath it lay precision and control. Every eye followed her movements, every pen started scribbling, and Joseph's smirk faltered slightly. He sensed something different, a subtle shift, a warning he could not ignore. As the students focused on their papers, Madam Himeka walked deliberately toward Joseph, holding a stack of papers. Her gaze was unwavering. "Joseph, may I have a word?" she asked quietly, just loud enough for him to hear it. Joseph's confident facade wavered. He had not anticipated confrontation in this controlled, public manner. "Sure, madame," he replied, attempting nonchalance, but his voice carried a hint of unease. Madam Himeka placed a hand on the desk, leaning slightly closer, and said in a whisper, "I hope you remembered to bring the materials." In that subtle exchange, Joseph realized the trap. Madam Himeka had anticipated his every move. Security cameras captured his reactions. The notes he had hidden were now evidence, and the authorities were observing discreetly from nearby. His overconfidence had blinded him to the careful strategy she had laid out. His smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. What is this?" he stammered, realizing his blackmail could no longer control her. Madam Himeka maintained her composure. "You believed you had power over me, Joseph, but every action has a consequence. You have crossed boundaries that cannot be ignored. Today, your game ends." She motioned subtly, and 2 school staff members entered quietly, signaling that the authorities were ready. Joseph's attempts at defiance faded as he understood he had been outmaneuvered. Every threat he had issued, every note he had slipped, every moment of intimidation was now part of a documented trail that would not let him escape accountability. The classroom felt heavy with tension. Students glanced between their teacher and the front row boy, sensing that something monumental was unfolding. Madam Himeka's gaze softened slightly, not toward Joseph, but toward the students. She wanted them to see strength, dignity, and courage. Her voice, firm yet calm, addressed the entire class. "Let this be a lesson, not just in academics, but in integrity and respect. No one, regardless of age or position, can manipulate or intimidate another with impunity." Joseph was gently escorted out, his eyes wide with disbelief, the weight of exposure settling upon him. The notes, the threats, the hidden video, all were now part of the evidence held by the authorities. Madam Himeka watched him leave, feeling a mixture of relief and triumph. Her heart, once heavy with fear, now swelled with the satisfaction of reclaiming control. She had turned vulnerability into strength, threat into resolution. Later, as the rain cleared and the sun peeked through the clouds, Madam Himeka returned home. Aishi ran to her, hugging her mother tightly. "Mama, you're safe," the child exclaimed, eyes wide with innocence and relief. Himika smiled, brushing her daughter's hair back. "Yes, darling, we're safe now. Everything is fine." She allowed herself a moment of quiet, letting the tension of the past days dissolve. The ordeal had tested her in ways she had never imagined, but she had emerged not as a victim, but as a survivor, strong, courageous, and unbroken. That evening, Madame Himika sat by her window, sipping tea, reflecting on the events. The city below glimmered with lights, each one a reminder that life moved on and that courage could turn fear into power. Joseph's reign of intimidation was over, his audacity confronted and contained, and as the night settled, Himika felt a profound sense of peace, her dignity restored, her career intact, and her spirit unshaken. The story of the blackmail, the fear, and the ultimate triumph would remain a private lesson, a testament to the resilience of those who refuse to be controlled by threats. A reminder that no matter how dark the storm, light and justice could prevail.